Going viral can turn someone into a superstar in a single night, but what really matters is how they handle that spotlight. For Salt Bae, one tiny clip didn't just change his life, it flipped it inside out. One moment, he's the internet's favorite luxury chef, throwing down sprinkles for legends like Leonardo DiCaprio and David Beckham. And the next, he's slashing prices at empty restaurants, getting kicked out of a Champions League after-party, and getting roasted non-stop by the same people who used to hype him up. It's wild to think a man who built a whole empire off one dramatic sprinkle could slip this hard, but that's exactly what's going down. Salt Bae's fall isn't slowing down either. It's speeding up. But to really get how things ended up like this, you gotta see where it all began. Before the memes, before the gold stakes, before the moments that made people cringe, Salt Bae was just Nusret, a kid who dropped out of school and put everything into learning how to cut meat the right way. For years, nobody knew him. Nobody talked about him, and honestly, most people probably walked past him without a second glance. He was just a regular dude chasing his passion, traveling around, picking up skills, and sharpening his craft any way he could.
Just wanted to make it very clear that this is some absolute clown behavior. I never think it's a good idea to try and make one thing your entire identity. Whether it's a meme, whether it's you just being a fan of something, I always think that that's always just going to be a path to cringe. Just imagine getting a huge ego because you sprinkle salt down your arm on overpriced.
Eventually, Nusret opened his own steakhouse in Istanbul, and that's when things finally started to move. He began recording himself at work, slicing meat with style for a tiny online crowd that barely noticed him. But all it took was one moment, one 10-second clip in 2017, where he flicked his wrist and sprinkled salt like he was born for the stage. That smooth move, that dramatic sprinkle, that chef swagger, it took over the entire internet instantly. That was the moment a butcher turned into a brand. He had no idea what was coming, but that flashy sprinkle was about to blast him into global fame. Suddenly, that little wrist flick turned into a whole cultural wave, pushing Salt Bae into the spotlight as the must-see chef for the wealthy and the wannabe wealthy. His Istanbul steakhouse flipped into a luxury hangout where celebrities, billionaires, and anyone chasing status pulled up just to get a taste of his viral energy. His growth was crazy fast. New spots started popping up in Dubai, Miami, London, LA, and New York like he was building an empire overnight. And every single restaurant came with the same formula. Sky-high prices, steaks covered in gold leaf, and the bragging rights of saying you ate at the legendary Salt Bae's place. Before long, he wasn't even a chef anymore. He was a walking tourist attraction. People gladly spent stacks just to watch him sprinkle salt on a $1,000 gold-plated steak right in front of them.
It's not in any way related to any of these Argentina players. It struck a wrong chord. It struck to me as like kind of this sort of ceaseless self-promotion of this guy. And look, you're a successful businessman. What you do works, but like, this is their moment. It's not.
For a while, that showman energy worked like magic. But when your whole brand depends on theatrics, it only takes one wrong move to make the world look at you sideways. And that moment hit hard in 2018 when Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro walked into one of Salt Bae's restaurants for a private dinner, smiling and posing while eating luxurious steaks during a time when his own country was struggling with extreme hunger. The backlash was instant and heavy. Most of the anger ended up aimed at President Maduro, but Salt Bae didn't walk away untouched either. People were furious, including Venezuelans who felt betrayed watching their leader feast in style while their families suffered. One person said, "Food tastes so much better when you know folks back home are starving." Another said, "As a Venezuelan, it angers me seeing my president feasting on a meal, while me and my family were starving. Shame on him." This whole mess made people look at Salt Bae and his restaurants completely differently. To them, he started to look like someone who valued fame and cash way more than basic respect or morals. And the thing about chasing the spotlight nonstop is that eventually, it flips on you fast. Jump to December 18th, 2022, the FIFA World Cup final in Qatar. Moments after Argentina took the win, Salt Bae somehow slipped onto the pitch like he was part of the squad. That alone had people raising eyebrows. But what he did next sent the internet into chaos. While the whole world was celebrating one of the most emotional victories in football history, Salt Bae was locked in on something totally different, making himself the main character. In a moment that made millions cringe, he pushed his way into the players' space, pulling on Messi for a selfie like he was owed one. Then, he went even further, grabbing a player's medal and putting it in his mouth like it was some kind of prop for his next viral move. The whole thing looked messy, and not the good kind. Just uncomfortable and out of place. But the moment that really sent people over the edge was when he tried to grab the actual World Cup trophy and even kissed it. That trophy is sacred, and only the winning team is allowed to touch it. So seeing him handle it like a TikTok accessory had fans furious. Even Messi's body language said everything. The man wanted absolutely no part of whatever Salt Bae was trying to pull. When the clips hit the internet, football fans and the media ripped into him for disrespecting the sport and trying to steal the spotlight from Argentina's moment. People were shocked watching him yank the trophy from the player's hands without even asking, acting like he owned the whole event. One person called it the definition of cringe, and another said, "I couldn't even watch it biting that dude's medal." A small part of you might almost respect the boldness if it wasn't so painfully embarrassing to watch. He had absolutely no business being on that pitch, and people were hoping he, and whoever helped him sneak in, would get hit with consequences for real. The whole thing looked wild. And when Salt Bae was asked why he pulled a stunt like that, his explanation only made everything worse. He claimed he was just excited and didn't know he wasn't allowed to touch the trophy, which sounded unbelievable to almost everyone who heard it. He said, "I didn't go on pitch with the purpose of advertising. I just felt like it. Then it was a bit of a surprise. I never ever wanted to overshadow anything. I didn't like the attention." But we all know exactly how true that is. Those words didn't clean up the situation. They made it look even more desperate. That moment wasn't just cringe. It crossed such a serious line that FIFA had no choice but to get involved. The backlash was so intense that they opened a full investigation to figure out how he even got onto the field in the first place. After that, they officially banned him from all future FIFA events to make sure he could never pull that move again at any level of the sport. That's how bad the fallout was. You'd think that level of global embarrassment would make him calm down and stop trying to force himself into moments that don't include him. But Salt Bae proved once again that his hunger for attention was way stronger than any shame he might feel. Because recently, he decided to try another headline-grabbing moment. And this one blew up in his face even harder. At a Champions League after-party, an event meant for the players who actually fought through the tournament, Salt Bae rolled up uninvited, trying to sprinkle his way back into the spotlight like the old days. But this time, things flipped on him instantly. Instead of sneaking in without anyone noticing, everything went the opposite direction. He got caught right on the spot and ended up getting kicked out by security like any regular party crasher, and the whole world saw it. It wasn't slick, it wasn't smooth, it was straight up embarrassing, and people didn't hold back on roasting him for it. Salt Bae tried to clean it up, of course. He claimed he only walked in because he was dared, saying he just wanted to return the love and sign autographs for fans. Then he insisted he had no idea the party was exclusive, basically trying the same "I didn't know" excuse all over again. It looked more like he was trying to dodge responsibility than tell the truth.
Una sola vez en la vida, ¿verdad? Ah. Con la sal, mira.
But Salt Bae didn't just wake up one morning and decide to crash football events for laughs. There were deeper things going on behind the scenes that pushed him into these desperate moves. Once you peek behind the shiny curtain of his steak empire, everything starts to line up. The truth is, Salt Bae's glossy Instagram image was way more polished than real life, and the cracks started to show fast. The illusion of perfection began breaking apart when his own staff started speaking out about what it was actually like working for him. Reports popped up of workers dealing with exhausting conditions, getting overlooked, underpaid, and treated unfairly by higher-ups. One non-Turkish manager said he was constantly sidelined and mistreated, and when he finally spoke up about discrimination, he didn't get support. He got demoted on the spot. That looked like blatant favoritism, and according to the reports, Salt Bae was heavily discriminatory. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Some female staff shared even darker stories, painting a picture that shocked people even more. One woman said she was forced to wear club-style outfits instead of the proper uniforms for waitresses, which made her uncomfortable, but she had no choice. Another said when she reported being sexually harassed by a customer, the response she got wasn't protection. She was told to play along, which left people horrified when they heard it. Some employees even described Salt Bae as a dictator with a full-on god complex, saying he ran the place with control issues and no empathy. The more these stories came out, the more the public realized how different the real Salt Bae was from the smooth, smiling image he pushed online. Imagine catching a full-on god complex just because you drop salt off your arm like it's some mystical skill.
World's governing body, FIFA, has opened an investigation into a security and protocol breach at the end of the World Cup final in Qatar. This after celebrity chef Salt Bae was filmed harassing players from the victorious Argentine team, including...
And if the other claims out there are true, like allegedly holding workers' passports so they couldn't leave the country, then it's easy to see why people started giving him that label. Things got so intense that 5 of his grill workers finally hit their breaking point and dragged him to court. They accused him of refusing to pay overtime, even after they put in brutal 72-hour weeks, all while he quietly pocketed a 3% cut of their tips. Now, 3% might not sound huge at first glance, but taking any piece of your workers' tips, especially when the work environment is already rough, looks like pure greed, and when the case landed in court, the judge didn't hesitate. He ordered Salt Bae to cough up around $230,000 in compensation. That should have been the moment justice felt real. But right after the ruling, Salt Bae showed exactly who he was again. Instead of owning up and moving forward, he fired those same workers, saying he wasn't satisfied with their performance.
It's happening! Oh!
The timing was way too suspicious, and everyone saw right through it. And it wasn't only the staff who'd had enough. Soon the customers started pushing back too. For a while, the wild prices at his restaurants were part of the flex. People loved showing off gold-covered steaks and $1,000 bills like it proved something. But everything flipped the day Salt Bae posted a customer's receipt himself, adding the smug caption, "Quality, never expensive." That line was supposed to make him look classy, but instead it sparked the exact opposite reaction. People were furious. They finally sat down, looked at the numbers, and started asking the questions he never expected anyone to ask. His followers felt like he was basically bragging about overcharging them, and the whole thing turned into a major embarrassment that he couldn't sprinkle his way out of. People started asking the real question, what exactly are we paying for here? Is it the gold leaf you can grab at a regular baking shop for under $12? Or is it the beef that's supposed to be top quality, even though former employees admitted they were pressured to lie about how good it really was? That's when customers finally realized they'd been dropping wild amounts of money on food that many folks said tasted totally average. And once people compared the prices of basic drinks at the mall to what Salt Bae was charging inside his restaurants, the anger exploded even more. Someone pointed out, one Heineken is $55 LMAO. We're not expensive. Another added, one Red Bull is 30 pounds. 2 glasses of Coca-Cola are 18.
Yes, sir.
That right there made people feel like the whole luxury vibe was fake, like it was straight up feels like a scam energy. Soon, the same internet that once adored him turned on him hard. Jokes about his prices started pouring in non-stop, and the reviews got uglier every week. People were calling the food mid, bland, or outright terrible, saying things like they paid over $1,000 just to have some guy with sweaty, hairy arms sprinkle salt over their steak. Another person even joked, "I'm gonna start eating half an ice pop and selling them as half the calories." The mockery was brutal. At one point, his London restaurant was ranked as one of the worst in the city, a huge hit to someone who built a whole image around being elite and exclusive. But the worst part of his reputation drop wasn't even that. The biggest blow came from something that happened way back in 2018, and this time it had nothing to do with overpriced meals. It had to do with real people getting hurt. His obsession with over-the-top showmanship backfired in the most terrifying way imaginable. During one of his dramatic tableside fire tricks, things went horribly wrong, and customers literally ended up covered in flames. The stunt that was supposed to impress the room turned into a nightmare no one there would ever forget. 4 unsuspecting tourists came in hoping to enjoy his famous tableside show, but instead, they walked out not just disappointed, they walked out traumatized for life. The The most heartbreaking case was Christina Tris Nava, a young model who suffered third-degree burns across 35% of her body. Accidents happen, sure, but this one was devastating, and it exposed just how dangerous his flashy stunts could be. After all of this, Salt Bae didn't just face angry comments online. He got hit with around 8 lawsuits from both burned customers and furious workers who were fed up with mistreatment. Suddenly, he wasn't the fun chef with the cool sprinkle anymore. He became the punchline for cruelty, carelessness, and arrogance. People weren't just annoyed. Some were wishing he finally faced real consequences for everything he put others through. But the chaos didn't stop there. In 2020, another ugly situation came out involving a customer named Dwayne Miranda. He claimed his order was quietly switched from the regular $275 tomahawk steak to the gold-covered version that costs $1,000 each. And he wasn't told about the upcharge until the bill arrived. That left him staring at a $5,000 check he never agreed to pay. He refused to hand over that kind of money, and instead of solving the issue professionally, the restaurant called the cops on him. To avoid escalation, he ended up paying, but he went straight to social media afterward and blasted Salt Bae over and over again. And this time, people actually listened. This whole ordeal wrecked Salt Bae's online image even more. Celebrities who once lined up for photos with him and his gold steaks slowly backed away, pretending they were never fans in the first place. The shine he built his brand on started to fade fast, and folks finally understood just how much of his fame was held together by smoke, mirrors, and clout. When you look back at everything, the scandals, the lawsuits, the humiliations, it becomes clear why he kept chasing the spotlight so desperately, even when it meant embarrassing himself in front of the whole world. Fast forward to 2025 and the lawsuits are stacked high. The internet has turned him into a meme, and the love that once boosted his rise has completely transformed into non-stop ridicule. It became obvious that his tricks weren't hitting anymore. The internet was dragging him non-stop, and his restaurants weren't just struggling, they were losing serious money. That's when Salt Bae finally had to face reality. And what happened next showed everyone that things were about to get way worse than anyone expected. At his London location, staff reportedly had to turn off the heating during peak hours just to cut operational costs. Imagine that, a multi-million-dollar franchise telling workers to freeze while customers paid top dollar for food. It looked cheap, desperate, and embarrassing for someone who built his whole name on luxury. And then Salt Bae made a move nobody saw coming. See? He'd always been the type to chase every dollar he could grab, squeezing value out of anything that could bring in extra cash. We've already seen that through his wild menu prices and even the accusations about him taking a cut from his workers' tips. So watching what he did next felt like the biggest sign yet that his empire was slipping fast. Out of nowhere, he started slashing prices across multiple restaurants, a full 180, from the ridiculous, sky-high luxury pricing that made him famous. The irony was unreal, coming from the same man who once bragged, "Quality's never expensive." But when your franchise is inches away from collapsing and everything you built is crumbling, suddenly those principles don't matter anymore. Survival becomes the new motto. But here's the twist. Even after dropping the prices, people still didn't rush back in. Because let's be real, even his discounted menu was still way too expensive for the average person.
No.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
And by that point, the damage to his reputation was already done. People didn't see luxury anymore. They saw desperation, and no price cut could fix that. Slowly but surely, the fate of his restaurants was sealing itself. One by one, his locations. Those restaurants that once bragged about months-long waiting lists and even charged over £200 just for a reservation were suddenly struggling to fill tables on a regular Friday night. The fall was real, and it hit harder than anyone expected. His restaurant empire in the US shrank from 7 locations down to only 2 in just 2 years. And the situation overseas wasn't looking any better either. But honestly, the saddest part for Nusret wasn't even the money. It was the fact that he was losing himself. When you look back, he started as a humble butcher who genuinely loved the craft, a guy who traveled just to learn how to cut and cook meat the right way. But once the internet turned him into a meme and the fame hit, he got hooked on that attention, and he couldn't let it go. Every move after that was him chasing relevance like his whole identity depended on it. Now he isn't seen as a world-class chef, and nobody is talking about his recipes anymore. He's not respected for his skill, his flavor, or his technique. To most people, he's just that cringy dude who sprinkles salt off his arm and tries way too hard to stay famous. Salt Bae turned into living proof that going viral can be a blessing and a curse at the same time, especially when your entire brand depends on being a meme instead of being real. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in the next one.